I want Dom Kane server on Discord. Mono-friendly mixing for deep melodic progressive vibe. My advice could not be more simple. Do not worry about. Focus on having a decent mix and basic master. Most people, they just want a good song. This or that producer has found his or her sound. No, my mum doesn't like what I do. Why in electronic music are we all so obsessed? I feel as if I'm starting to hit a creative block. I want to agree with you, but I'm not convinced I can. Hey guys, welcome to the Kane audio vlog. It's Friday for you, it's Thursday for me. It's time for another Ask Me Anything. Usual rules apply. Comment anything you want below this video and I'll get back to you in next week's video. Normally I would film this on the Friday, so apologies to anyone who has put a comment in for the last 24 hours. Tomorrow being, for me, Friday, I'm away doing family stuff. And then this afternoon, this evening, I am rushing about right now to get this recorded because later today I am leaving Manchester, going to London for a Universal Composers Party thing. So, yeah, there we go. Before I get on with the questions from last week's video, house admin, I have started writing them down. What have I written? They're last week's. Yeah, this AMA is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so if you're listening there, welcome. What do I need to inform you of? Later today, Thursday, so when you're watching this you probably already know about it. For those of you that watch in pretty much real time, Mousetrap are coming to London and we will be hitting Village Underground August 22nd. So for any of you guys that watch or listen to this podcast, August 22nd, London, Village Underground, pretty sure that's Shoreditch. There is, hang on, I got a proof of the flyer here. There is IO, Rinzen, Atlas, Gallia, Ghost Dance, and myself. It's 8 PM, 2 AM, Thursday, August 22nd, London Village Underground. Hopefully, we'll see you all there. It should be a really, really good event. Yeah, so I think that's getting announced today in my time, Thursday. So yeah, hopefully by the time this video goes out, it's public knowledge. Right, let's crack on with having a look at last week's video and starting at the top of the comments, Reality on X Production. Dom, I was thinking about that for the next video. Me waiting emoticon, Dom Kane after months. Nothing. Yeah, okay, my apologies. Yeah, I do keep going, oh yeah, I'll make a video on that at some point, and then I forget. I should probably start writing these down, to be honest. Plus, I want Dom Kane server on Discord. Miles, high five. Yeah, a few people have asked me for a Discord server. I'm going to be completely honest, I've only ever used Discord once for a gaming project. And so I don't know if I was using it properly. I was invited to the Discord server, it was fine, but it was what it was. But yeah, quite a few people seem to like Discord. What's the deal with that? Can someone let me know? Because I don't really see the appeal of that compared to something like, well, to be honest, YouTube. You know, I love the fact that we've all got these comments and conversations going, and I love the fact that oh, actually, I'll step in here and also say Thank you to everyone who watched my Bad Music Producers video on Tuesday. That reaction's been really good, actually. I'm really pleased with the way that turned out. It's still, I mean, I keep saying this, but it's still early days, so I know there's a long way to go with these videos, and I kind of feel like, you know, I don't want to be a YouTuber stroke daily vlogger type person. That's not my intention, but at the same time I kind of love doing what I do, and I think I'm slowly starting to find where I sit in it, because I'm not, well, I mean, anyone watching this has worked it out already, but I'm not one of those guys that's like, hey, what's up YouTube, and all of that crazy shit. Yeah, thanks to everyone who watched that video, and thanks for all the comments. And on that note, it's nice to be able to have a bit of a back and forth in the comment fields. So for me, I'm wondering what's the advantage of Discord compared to that, and I kind of prefer both YouTube and the Facebook group. By the way, if any of you watching this don't know about the Facebook group, I have a Facebook group called the Dom Kane Producers Group, I think, and where you can all, you know, ask for advice or tips or share some knowledge or whatever. That's what it's about. It's about a community of producers getting together and just helping each other out, really supporting each other. So yeah, so someone let me know what's the deal with Discord. Does that offer something more convenient? Because I don't see it myself, but maybe I just don't know what it is. Anyway, Raphael, I'm not going to even attempt your other two names, but I'll call you Raphael. Hi Dom, huge admirer here. My humble suggestions / topics. Okay, there's 3 big ones here. 1. Mono-friendly mixing for deep melodic progressive vibe. Can you do or already have some material on how to get a proper mono-friendly mix without sacrificing the beautiful, spacious 3D field of the deep melodic progressive kind of vibe? Kinda Yours or Anjuna Deep, Ein Music Recordings, Lane 8, etc. I love how my drums and bass sounds in mono, but when it comes to synth, there's always a noticeable clarity lost, besides the fact that I have been checking the track in mono at most of the process of creating the track, so it has some really obvious phasing issues. I can notice and fix it, but when it reaches the final phase, like having a final decent mix master with the synths with similar clarity when in mono, at the moment I'm doing a mixmaster course with the master engineer of Get Physical, and the dude is totally anti-Haas effect, but his background, it's techno. So the Haas effect, just for anyone watching, listening, the Haas effect is where you essentially duplicate 2 mono channels, pan one left, pan one right, delay, let's say the right channel, over, if memory serves me, over 10 milliseconds, and you start to get the Haas effect, which basically, so before 10 milliseconds, a smaller than 10 millisecond delay is essentially a phaser, and becomes chorus, and then greater than 10 milliseconds is the Haas effect, which gives like a stereo widening effect, basically. So yeah, there we go. But his background is techno, real warehouse techno, or this kind of modern techno, blah 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 blah. Right, so normally doesn't have the same kind of attention or approach to the 3D field like Your Vibe, or like I mentioned, some Anjuna Deep stuff, Lane 8 or iMusic. So I second guess myself. I really don't know if I should 100% abandon the Haas effect, if it has a trick to fix that, or how to use it properly without having phasing issues. Right, I'm going to stop reading more here. You know what? It's a good question. I have seen people talk about this before. You know what? Forget it. Forget about it. Just don't even think about it. My advice could not be more simple. Do not worry about your 3D field. At the end of the day, it used to be the case that most club sound systems, most TVs, most radios, most places you would listen to music, gramophones, you name it, they were all mono. So in the 70s, definitely. In the 80s, yes, a lot. In the 90s, even still, it was quite important to make sure that your song sounded as best as it could in mono, because probably half of the listeners were going to end up listening to something in mono. Then as the world progressed, even to this decade, to an extent we had mobile phones and they were mono, and so it's always been quite an important thing to make your music as best as it can be in mono. However, anything in mono will always sound a little bit shit because there's no definition, there's no spatial awareness, there's no depth in that clarity and space. And you can't really, yes, you can use the Haas effect, but you can't really recreate the real effect, not across. So the thing you need to remember here as well is you could have one pad chord sound, and in those pads you have, this isn't a real measurement, but let's pretend it is, just for argument's sake. Your pads could have a 10% stereo-ness, a 10% width to it, and then your lead line could have a 30% width, and your snare drums could have a 40% width, whatever. If you're using the Haas effect to try and recreate a stereo field, you're going to have the exact same percentage or width, whether it be 10, 20, 30%, whatever. You're going to have the same dynamic space in every single one of your instruments. So even if it sounds really wide, now everything sounds really wide, everything sounds equally wide, which to me makes it sound flat. So I don't think it's something that we can really fix, and also I don't think it's anything that's broken in the first place. So when I'm doing a mix down, I will always, I've got a button here, my F1 button, will flick it into mono, so I can listen to everything in mono, and I just double check that there's nothing too crazy going on. There's no phase distortion, or your kick drum's not being weird or whatever. So long as that's okay, then I'm okay. When I hit that mono button, yes, half my lead synths kind of don't sound anywhere near as good as they did in stereo, but I don't see that as a major problem. That shouldn't be a major problem, because if someone's listening in mono, they're only going to get whatever the best it can be in mono, and that's never going to be as good as stereo, in the same way as stereo will never be as immersive as Dolby Atmos, so that, and we don't sit here with stereo speakers going, how can I make this sound like Dolby Atmos? Because it's not Dolby Atmos. It never will sound as good as Dolby Atmos. So knock that down a peg. We should be saying the same for mono. Yes, are there any issues in mono? Check for issues. There shouldn't be any phasing issues. If you are getting horrendous phasing issues, then there's probably something fundamentally wrong with the production. So, look into things like linear phase EQs and reverbs and things like that. But aside from that, there shouldn't really be any issues. So my advice is, don't worry about it. It's not a problem. It shouldn't be a problem. And most TVs, most mobile phones, most nightclubs, pretty much, I'd say 80% of everything we listen to today is stereo anyway. So we the mono mix is not so important. It's still important for a mix master engineer to make sure there's no mistakes, but it's not important for a mono mix to be pleasurable. I guess that's the point. So yeah, there we go. Number 2, you're asking, should I focus on having a decent mix and basic master and leave it the final master to the label or some other engineer? My quote-unquote studio is a bedroom, 0 treatment, but I have headphones, Sennheiser HD25s besides the KRKs. I know some established artists. I'm going to rush through some of your questions because they are very long. But you're basically asking, should you focus on having a decent mix and master and leave it to, or I think leave it to final master to the label? So again, this is one of those things where it's very difficult. You've said, before showing myself to DJ producer labels that I love finally starting doing proper photos. Well, hang on. I believe I need a decent product music before showing myself to the DJs, producers and labels, doing proper photos and branding. Or maybe this is classic imposter syndrome talking. I see you've watched my video. Am I right in choose to finish a proper mix, at least mono friendly, with the limitation that I have, and finally send it out to the master? Right, I think you're getting worried about the wrong things here. First of all, is your song good? If it's good, then, and you're worrying about mixing and mastering, then maybe get a professional mix master engineer, a mix and master engineer, because they will tell you if something is horribly wrong or really good or whatever, or they should if they're worth the money. So if you've got no treatment in your room, you've got KRK speakers, you've got HD25s, you're probably not hearing everything you need to hear. Now, for most situations, that's not a major problem. I've always said don't worry too much about the equipment you have. You know, for a good 70% of situations, especially if you're doing things like a mix and master, you know, if for example you're cutting off everything below 40 hertz in a standard mix and master, then you know you don't need to really hear it on your HD25s or KRKs. It doesn't really matter because you're cutting everything below 40 hertz or whatever it was I said. Anyway, so I wouldn't worry too much like that. You're mentioning branding and stuff like that. That's something that I think record labels will definitely look for these days. I think labels look for a whole package. They're not just looking for a producer making a good song or a good track or whatever. I think nowadays they're looking for somebody they can help package and somebody that can help package them. And I think that's quite important. Am I right to choose to finish a proper mix, at least mono-friendly? So I would say, personally, before I ever send anything to a record label, I would give it at least a basic mix and master. I would say do it the best you can possibly do. Some record labels like to use their own mastering engineers. Some record labels aren't bothered. Some record labels don't even know any mastering engineers. So it's different for different labels. I can't speak for any in particular. I know that with Mousetrap, for example, they have a mastering engineer, Dean, who is amazing. And I know that most of my releases with Mousetrap, I've mastered them myself, and nobody's said anything bad about that, so that's okay. But there have been a few of the tracks where I've sat there and gone, you know what, I'm not happy with this, and I don't know why, and I can't work it out. And sometimes it's because you're just too involved in your own music, and sometimes I try and mix my track so many times that I start going insane, and I start going, I don't even know what's good anymore. I don't know what's good and what's bad. I've lost track on everything. So I'll give it to Mousetrap and say, please, you do it. But I don't see a problem with any of that. You know, at the end of the day, you work with what you've got. So I would say make the best possible track you can. The reason I say this as well is try and give it a basic mix and master before you send it to any record label. The reason I say this is because it seems these days the vast majority of A&R managers and people in general that I work with across the industry, they're unable to see beyond a draft. If you send them something, and let's say, for example, there's a wrong snare drum in there, and you know it, and you tell them, oh, don't worry about that snare drum, I'll change that, but this is the rough draft. They can't hear a different snare drum. They can't envision what you're envisioning. So you need to give them what will essentially be the final product, and let them decide if something needs tweaking or changing or whatever. That's up to them. But your job is really just make it as final as you possibly can, because if they reject it, you want to know why they reject it. And if they're rejecting it because the snare drum wasn't very good, and you're thinking, well, I told you I'm going to change that, then you can't really come back and say anything. So there we go. And then your third and final question. I'm waiting / holding too much, or perhaps it's too late. So 3. I'm 31 years old. I've been producing, mainly studying tutorial mode since 2012-2013, but it was about 2 or 3 years that several friends do not stop asking me to release music, but they do not have the same critical sense. I have almost 700 unfinished projects by now, but finishing stuff is not a problem since early 2018, I think. My main problem at the moment, I believe it's the pro level mix and master. I have not releasing songs because when I compare the tracks to artists and labels, right, so this is what we're talking about with imposter syndrome. So there's a few things here. First of all, if you've got 700 unfinished projects, you need to let go of some of those. Just put them in an archive and forget about them for now. Second to that, I would say it sounds like you're focusing far too much on the mix and master, but really I think maybe it needs a lot more focus on the actual song and the track itself. Maybe the song needs improving, because I think most record labels, engineers, whoever, can see beyond a bad mix and master if it's a good song. Personally, I'm slightly different because I focus on the mix and master, so I know there are people like us out there, but for most people, they just want a good song. They don't really care about the mix and master. So maybe 65% close in the sense of loudness and presence, and probably the master. Also, if you're worrying this much about masters, get somebody else to master it for you. Get a mastering engineer, and then maybe practice and try and match that. So about being too late, I know for sure that I will work with this in my life. I already am. It's what my heart and soul tells and demands from me. But I wonder myself, is it too late for a career as active DJ producer on the circuit? No, it's never too late, to be honest. I know for the fact that underground scenario circuit is way bigger tolerance with age, without mention way bigger longevity too, but it is cool to know the insight reflection of what an established artist thinks. So I think don't worry about age. I don't think it's ever too late. And I also think something you need to remember, and everybody watching this needs to remember, not being being a rich and famous touring DJ producer is only one job in a very, very, very big industry. So there are a million other jobs, whether it be on the engineering side, on the A&R side, as ghostwriters, producers, writers, singer-songwriters, musicians, session musicians, recording engineers. There's so many jobs and that involve production, you know. So I really wouldn't worry. And even in the actual producer side of things, you've got library production, you've got corporate production, you've got entertainment production, you've got artist production. There's music production in all of these areas, and yes, the one in the spotlight, the touring DJ producer, has maybe a slight bias towards the young, good-looking, whatever. But I don't think that should stop anyone. You know, I know it was probably easier for me to be a touring DJ when I was in my early 20s, but now I'm in my late 30s. I still get gigs, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, and actually I have a slightly different career now, but I'm still a happy working producer. So I really don't think you need to worry about age. Best wishes. Oh my god, I'm embarrassed this comment is so big. You're welcome. That's what this AMA session is for. In fact, we've spent 25 minutes and my camera's gonna stop in a second, so I'm just gonna hit reset on that, and I'm back. Right, next, Rod Marconi. Hey Dom, what does it mean when you hear someone say this or that producer has found his or her sound? Many thanks. What does it mean? I mean, I think it's just that a producer has become identifiable or distinguished from other producers in that they found a common theme in their music. I've heard a fair few people mention that I have a sound, and I think I do almost at every level. So it's quite a vague term, but if I use my own music as an example, I think starting at the beginning, the songwriting and melodic themes and constructions of my music are probably quite similar in the fact that I like, you know, the dotted note melodies, and that I like the scaling melodies, and I like to change the rhythm of my chords. So if I'm using pads or basses, long note basses, I'm never, or not very often, am I on the 4/4. It's not a 1-bar chord. It might be a nearly 1-bar chord and then a change a half beat before the next phrase or bar. So I think if you were to analyze all of my music, there's probably common themes running throughout the whole thing. So that's the music. The sound design, there's definitely common themes. You know, you all know that my Moog plays a huge part in that, and I've sort of developed certain tones, I guess, that I use a lot. And then if you look at my mixing and mastering, there's probably quite common themes there, in that I like that crisp clarity, presence in things like the hi-hats. You know, I like the hi-hats to play a key feature in the music, and I don't tend to have too much distortion or anything in the low end, and I don't tend to pump the overall master. I don't tend to master as loud as a lot of other people. I don't tend to squeeze it out too much. So I try and sort of keep some dynamic range. I think they're all sort of common themes. So I think that's what it means to me personally, that those are my common themes. It's just my style and my technique, I suppose. So yeah, but one thing I will say, you know, in terms of quote unquote finding my sound, it really happened by accident for me. And I know I've mentioned this before, so I won't go into it in great detail now. But I got to a point where I'd pretty much almost given up trying to be a music producer in the sense of being an artist. I was running my studio. I was still doing all sound design and recording projects for other artists and writing, and still doing everything that I do, but I wasn't doing anything under the name Dom Kane. I wasn't, you know, I don't think I even opened Bitwig or Ableton for about 2 years for myself. I just wasn't interested. And it was only that I accidentally sort of made some sounds that I fell in love with, and that reignited everything. And then I started piecing them together into tracks, and then I just fell in love with the whole process. And it was really just a happy accident. I wish I could say that I tried my best to find my sound or whatever, but actually I'd probably unsuccessfully tried discovering my own sound for years and years before I finally actually found it by accident. So yeah, hopefully that helps. I'm not entirely sure what you want from that answer, but who knows. Right, FanFan87, the hero of my favourite video game is Desmond Miles. So very good work this week. High five. Sorry for the long message incoming. Okay, you've all got long questions this week. Sorry for the long incoming message. First, thank you to take the time from my question last week. It was refreshing and is helping me to see where my errors are. So, to react to your answer, no, my mum doesn't like what I do, but Dad either, my girlfriend neither. Nobody in my family or in real life friends like what I do because they aren't progressive techno music listeners. The only honest feedbacks I have are on the internet, to be precise. I'm very active in my Discord community where I talk to other producers daily, which are American, Swedish, Russian. I receive and give feedbacks, so we all try to climb the mountain together. Okay, so that's good because that means you've got a basis of honesty in knowing where your music sits, so that's good. The frustration comes, in fact, to the fact that some of them play my tracks in clubs, a thing that I actually can't do myself. I'm working on having gigs opportunities, but that's another debate. So I have recently concrete feedbacks like add a layer here, pan better the hats, need to compress better the pad, from DJs playing my tracks out there. The results are those 50 tracks, but I didn't send all of them, just the best ones. You're probably right when you say, if I'm refused, there could be a problem on my tracks that I didn't spot yet. 3 years isn't enough yet. It's too soon. You may have right. I also gonna send tracks where you said to have very pro feedbacks. Okay, so I mentioned audio.net. So I think, yeah, this is a good ongoing thing, really. So again, I kind of touched on this earlier. I feel like a lot of people are maybe putting too much emphasis on mix and master and things like you said here, add a layer here, pan better the hi-hats, compress better that pad. I know they're just examples, so I'm not going to pick on that. But is anybody saying the melody needs to be more catchy? Or is anybody saying instead of the bass line needs to be more mono or more stereo or more distortion or something to do with sound design, is anybody saying that bass line needs to resolve to the tonic note and something musical? Because I feel like this is what's missing in a lot of techno and progressive house and everything. And actually, while it's gaining popularity, this is going to become a real issue. People are not paying attention to the music. And it's the music is, if somebody listens to one of your tracks, are they going to walk away from that track singing it in their head? Are they going to have that little earworm that plays over and over and over again in their head all day long? Because that is what makes a catchy track, and that is what makes something that sells, and that is what I think record labels look for, is that catchy thing that somebody is going to hear in a shop one day and go, oh, I know this track, I love this track, I know this producer or whatever. And I think that's probably the important bit, is the musicality of it. I feel like there aren't enough people putting enough importance on this at the moment. So maybe there's something there. You're probably right. So yeah, and the other thing is you said, 3 years isn't long enough. Yeah, so yeah, 3 years is not long enough. Don't get me wrong. I've gone through my story before, so I started trying to produce music. when I was maybe 13, 14, something like that. And I don't think I ever sent anything to a record label until I was maybe 19 at the earliest. So I'd spent a good 4 or 5 years before I even sent one demo. And looking back now, those demos were terrible. So I think it's important to note that, you know, talent doesn't come easy. It sure as shit didn't for me. I work hard at trying to learn my skills and whatever. I'm not a natural at these things. I wish I was, but I'm not. So yes, pro feedback. Another point is, no, I don't make the genre between techno and progressive because I want to sound different. I make the music I make and it appears to be as it is. Okay, that's fine. It's heavily inspired by Eric Prydz in terms of arrangement, progression, but not in terms of sound design, effects, and mood. Okay, well, that's good actually. I like that. I know it's difficult to understand without listening, but you said once on Twitter, I only listen to tracks I buy on Beatport, no feedback. If memory is good, so I don't want to send you demos. So it's more that I don't accept promos from, well, funny enough, from record labels and artists. I'm not interested in getting promos because I prefer to go shopping and buy the tracks for myself. Also, when it comes to demos from artists, I don't run a record label, so I don't know what I'm supposed to do with them. And also, if I don't like the song, how do I tell someone that? So I kind of don't accept demos because of that. And also, I'm usually just too busy. If I was to set up an email address, which I did once try and get demos from people, and I probably had 200 demos in the first week, and I can't spend that long going through them all, which is why I do register on audiu.net. So if you do want paid reviews on your music, then go to audiu.net and find me there. Because then at least there's something in it for both of us. Let's have a look. Last thing, as you suggested, I need to make more relationships outside. I'm not in a big city in France, so I need to move on metropolis or metropoles to make real life contact with the scene. It's my current biggest problem, I think. Internet is great, but human. So yes and no. So if you're in a small area in a province or whatever, then maybe the big cities aren't available to you, and that does make things difficult a little bit. But the internet is great for making initial contacts. So I think it's a strange time to be alive when it comes to these sorts of things, because if I look at 99% of my work, it comes from the internet. But that 1% is from me meeting people. And so, for example, going to London today to this Universal Records composer party, I know that I'll probably bump into some other composers there and we'll get talking and hopefully form, I don't know, some sort of relationship that may then one day become work or something. I don't know. It generally happens in these things, and that's why we all go to these things like Amsterdam dance events and the Miami Winter Music Conference and things like that, because they are good for networking, and they are good for not just networking, but meeting friends that you've known for years by email and haven't actually met face to face. So I think, what I'm saying is I don't think you need to move to a city, but going to things like ADE or Miami Winter Music Conference or maybe something along those lines, there's a lot of opportunities there without having to move house. So yeah, thanks for your help. As I said, it's my reason of life now, and I'll never stop. Well, that's the important thing is, look, if you enjoy producing music, then produce music. The moment you stop enjoying it, don't do it. Simple as that. Yeah, so there we go. Then some kind of name I can barely pronounce, underscores, there's some exclamation marks in there. Don't know what it is. So, hi Dom, here's the question. When I started interested music production, I was focused on listening first. Year after year, I've learned a lot, but only from hearing music, not from hours spent on making stuff. So don't fall off the chair, but this is the 8 years of doing this. I am addicted from Am I addicted from listening music? Well, I don't know, maybe. The good news is I'm close to completing the construction of my home studio, got nice gear and ideas, got 10 tracks, yes, from 8 years I made something, which needs better mixing. What do you think about that? I think we live in a weird world where for some reason, if you're in a rock band and you're a singer, a drummer, a guitarist, whatever, the drummer plays drums, the guitarist does the guitars, the singer does the singing, and you all go to a studio and you get a mix engineer to do the mixing and a mastering engineer to do the mastering. Why in electronic music are we all so obsessed with doing everything ourselves? I don't understand it. Why do we have to be writers, composers, sound designers, producers, mix engineers, mastering engineers, A&R managers, booking managers, tour managers, agents, you name it? Why do we have to do everything ourselves? Well, the answer is we don't. So I would say when you're starting out producing and you think you've got a good quality song, a catchy melody, whatever it is that you want, and you think you've nailed maybe the sound design, and the weakest part of your track now is the mix down, then go and hire a mix engineer. You know, join a couple of forums or communities or groups or whatever and see if there's a mix engineer who's maybe they're just learning out, they're starting out their career as a mix engineer, or, you know, see if you can work together on something. As a mix engineer, I've had a lot of clients where they've been starting out their career and I've done their mixing, and I can see, because every time they send a track and they get the finished one back, they're learning which bit I changed. Did I boost the hi-hats? Did I drop the hi-hats? Did I filter the hi-hats? Did I add reverb to the hi-hat? Whatever it is I did to each bit, they're learning every time I send a finished track back to them. And there have been lots of producers that I have mixed for in the past where maybe the first 5 tracks they ever sent me was a bit of a nightmare to mix, and then the second group of 5 tracks was just a bit better, and then, you know, maybe after 15, 20, 30 tracks it's just got better and better and easier to the point where I've then gone, you're doing it yourself, you know, you're good enough, you don't need a mix engineer. So I don't I think if you're in a position where you've got your home studio, you're learning, you're starting to get productions out there and you're happy with them, then don't worry about the mixing. Get a mix engineer to do that. Or if you've got other producer friends, maybe one of them is better at mixing and you're better at whatever, you know, swap. And, you know, it doesn't have to cost money. So there we go. I think we are getting there, guys. Zombo, thank you, Dom. Miles, high five. Finfighter, that was a great AMA. Thanks, Dom. Miles, high five. Man Oostling, hi, Dom. I've been making music almost 3 years now, and I feel as if I'm starting to hit a creative block. I do try to take lengthy breaks, but whenever I do, I feel incredibly lazy and unproductive. So I just end up going back into live after an hour and making music, even if I don't feel really creative. Do you have any tips for pulling myself out of this evil circle? First of all, don't worry about it. We all go through this. Second of all, you're saying you're taking breaks and then going back after an hour. To me, an hour isn't a break. A day, 2 days, 3 days, that's a break. So really don't worry about it. If you're only taking an hour off, then maybe you're burning yourself out and you need to be careful of that. My biggest tip is do something different to producing that might or might not inspire you. For me personally, watching sci-fi films does it for me, because I'll come across, there'll be, in every sci-fi film, in every good sci-fi film, there's always a sound or a melody or a theme. There's something in there. Sometimes it's colours and pictures that do it, but there's always something in a sci-fi film that makes me go, holy shit, what if I had this kind of a sound mixed with this and did this, and I just suddenly get inspired, and then I run into the studio and I'm like, I need to try and make this sound, and then I end up making a track. Or I might even make something that's in the end completely different to what I wanted, but I still like it and I run with it. And so I think that's kind of the important bit. For me, it's watching sci-fi movies. For other people, it may well be something entirely different. But I would say, it's kind of similar to listening to music that you like, but try to make sure that it's not exactly what you do. So if you make techno, for example, listening to other techno producers probably won't inspire you. But if you make techno, then maybe listening to some classical music might inspire you, or listening to some hip hop. I don't know. It could be different, but I always say try and find something that's different to your music and your production. And usually you find more inspiration in something like that. But I would also say an hour is not long enough. So I would say, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. There are days where I wake up, I come into the studio, I maybe start doing some admin or whatever, and then I open up Bitwig and I have a deadline for some project or whatever, and I there are lots of times where I come in and I just think, I'm not feeling it today. And it's at those times you sort of start to punish yourself for it. When reality is we're humans. We all just have days where we're not feeling super creative. We could be tired, we could be hungry, we could be thirsty, we could be just bored. There could be a multitude of reasons, and we don't know what those reasons are. We have different feelings on different days. So don't worry about it too much, but I think it's better to just go, you know what, I'll write off today, forget about today, I'll just go watch some sci-fi movies and relax for a couple of hours, and if nothing happens, I'll try again tomorrow. But it's all you can do. But the worst thing you can do is keep trying and stressing. That's the worst thing you could do, is stress about it, because nobody wants to write music when they're stressed out. So there we go. Dream State 42, Miles, high five. Have a great week, Dom. And you, Yanis Lukmelis, Miles, high five. St. Nicholas, Miles, high five. Andrew Hollis, this is the last one. Miles, high five. In reply to Fan87 and the issue of no tracks being picked up by labels, I have used a service called Amuse, amuse.io. It's a distribution service for free, so you end up on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and so on for free. You submit, and as long as you meet a few criteria, you are in. They also will make you a recording offer if they think you're a fit with them. I'm always of the opinion finished tracks on streaming services, etc. are better than tracks sitting on a hard drive. I suppose people may think that it devalues the work of an artist. Thoughts on this? Listen to this week's on Pocket Cast and sounded good. Cool, thank you very much. So I actually disagree with all of that. First of all, is a distribution service really for free? And if so, why? Where are they making their money? That's my biggest question. So that link I've just read out and publicised, I have never heard of it, so I don't know if it's any good or not. But I would always question, why is it free and how are they making their money? Are they taking a percentage? If they're taking a percentage, then maybe that's not such a good idea, because if you accidentally wrote a #1 hit single, then they're making a lot of money. So I think there's that to consider. Second of all, I've always talked about record labels being what I call the shit filter. They filter out the shit, and I also always talk about getting signed to a record label is not them serving you, and it's not you serving them. It's a collaboration. You are the artist, they are the label. You both have two very different jobs, but they go hand in hand and help each other. And that's how it should be. It's a working relationship, and I think it's really important that we have those. So in this day and age where, yes, we can self-release anything we want, and I'm not saying don't self-release. I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with self-releasing, but I do think if you're self-releasing, you're missing out on some opportunities. First of all, you're missing out on someone telling you your music sucks. And I think we need to hear it sometimes, if your music sucks, that is. So I think, and by that I don't mean, people on YouTube saying your music sucks. I mean people who have a valuable opinion, so i.e. record labels, distributors, whoever. So I think that's quite important. Then you'd say about finished tracks on streaming services are better than tracks sitting on a hard drive. I want to agree with you, but I'm not convinced I can. I get what you're saying, and I know you don't mean this, but I think we have to be careful that we don't open doors for people to just throw out 3 minutes of white noise and call it music. And I think we also have to be very careful with things like streaming services. Right now, I'll be honest, Spotify I think is pretty amazing, even though yes, their royalty cuts and their payment systems and whatever I think needs serious review. The way the system allows you to discover new music, I think, is something that we've been needing in this modern world for a long time. And I think they do that better than anyone right now, far better than Apple when it comes to discovering new music and new artists. And I think any system that allows you to discover new artists and new music helps people like us, you and me, the music producers, because not everybody knows our name, not everybody is gonna click here to listen. So the fact that they have an opportunity to discover us on their own accord is great. But if we flood those services with low quality music and subpar music, then that discoverability becomes harder and harder to access, because whilst, yes, I know algorithms and everything are going to put the better quality music ahead, I think we need to be somewhat careful with that. If you look at YouTube, is probably a good example where there are famous YouTubers in the world of YouTube, but outside of YouTube they're nobody, and it's a weird world to be a part of, and it's a weird system, and it kind of works, but at the same time there are kind of issues with that as well. And I think part of the reason for that is that it's something stupid like 1 billion minutes of video uploaded every day, or 1 billion hours, or whatever it is on YouTube. You're never possibly going to be able to view a fraction of that. And if we get to that point with music as well, where billions of hours of music is uploaded every day and 90% of it is shite, then we wouldn't even want to hear a fraction of it, let alone be a part of it. So I think it's just I don't know, it's that's the way I view it anyway. So I think record labels still to this day and age, I think record labels are still hugely important, but I also think that there's a lot of one-man band record labels that are maybe doing a bit more damage than they care to admit. So there we go, all very negative and depressing to finish this episode on, but whatever. It has been probably an hour now, so apologies. I can see my my voice is going as well, and my camera is about to hit the 30-minute mark, so I'm going to have to hurry this up. Thank you very much for listening. I'm not even going to do a keyword this week because I'm running out of minutes. And I've got to get my ass to London and edit this and whatever. So thank you very much for watching, listening, whatever it is you do to access this. And I will see you all next week. Have a really good weekend and a good next week. And I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.